All right, this Sunday coming up is April 13th. It's the triumphal entry into Jerusalem, and these texts can be found in Luke chapter 19. And the main idea for us is that God does not need us to proclaim the good news, but it is God's good pleasure to include us in what God is doing by working through you. For for millennia, Christian theologians, an essential aspect of what it meant for God to be God was for God to be what they call impassible. I mean, this wasn't about getting past God, though I'm sure God would be a darn good goalkeeper. I mean, let's go Blues. But about things affecting God. I mean, unlike you or me, God does not experience a change or emotion, or so that thinking goes. But I've often wondered if any of these theologians actually read the Hebrew Bible, where God is reported to display a wide array of emotions. Of course, they have and gave clever answers, but still the impassibility of God has always seemed, implausible to me. And Jesus goes one step beyond his impassibility in the entrance to Jerusalem when he sends his disciples to fetch that young donkey for him. And he says, tell them the Lord has need of it. Think about that. What a thing. What a thing that God would need something, and a donkey at that. More remarkable than what God needs here is what God doesn't need. That's us. When the leaders tell Jesus to order his followers to be quiet, Jesus retorts, I tell you, if these were silent, the stones would shut out. It's almost a throwaway line in the pageantry of Jesus' entrance into Jerusalem, and, we'd all be forgiven if we missed it. But in it, Jesus makes an important point about what our calling to discipleship is, and just importantly, what it's not. To be a disciple is it's a tall order. It's a pretty tall order. I mean, we're called to go and make disciples of all nations. This is a big deal, right? But these words remind us that we're not necessary to the work that God is doing. As Luther says in the Small Catechism, God's kingdom comes without our prayer. God does not need us to bring it about. And so we arrive at the more interesting question for us this Sunday. If God does not need us, why does God choose us? What is the reason to work through us if we're not actually necessary? I mean, in short, though God could very well proclaim the good news through the rocks, God chooses to work through you in order, I think, to make us part of the story. That's the gift, and I do mean absolute gift of being called to follow Jesus. And the gift is not actually salvation, or rather not merely salvation. Right? Salvation is a good thing. The great gift is being called to be part of God's story, to work about and bring the new creation about. We're not benched. We're not regulated to watch from the sidelines. We've been graced with the opportunity to be the ones whom this good news is proclaimed, and others are welcome into God's story. Now, we may not be necessary, but darn it, we sure are essential. God has chosen to weave our lives into the fabric of what God is doing. So let your hosannas be heard by all, for they will not forget that God spoke to them through you. Now, blessings on your week. What you do matters, and I'm so grateful for your partnership in the gospel.
In Christ we aspire to journey with one another in grace, in faith, in love and service.